Hey guys, welcome back to the next KenshinCast. This is episode 3, and in today's episode, we are actually very excited. We have a very special guest here, Matt from Monstrosities.
What up?
And we're very excited about this episode. Thank you, Matt, for coming on the episode today. This is actually the first one that we have a guest appearance on here, so we're super excited about that.
Time my ego can be stroked, of course I'm going to say yes. I'm happy. It's not like I like you two guys or anything.
Oh, no, of course not. No, this is just for a publicity stunt. No. Just pure publicity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you just felt bad for us. Like, you know what?
They could really. You had me come on.
They could really use me on there to really up themselves.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
We're desperate.
Yeah.
So. Yep, and then you guys have me, you guys know me, you guys know Nico. So in today's episode, we're going to be discussing basically which movie in the Heisei series ended it, or which one would have ended it better. So Nico is on the side that Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla would have been the better ending to the Heisei era, and I'm on the side that Destroya I think was the one that should have ended it. So Matt, what are your thoughts on the two movies? Where are you kind of in this spectrum?
Well, here's the thing. I need to be swayed by one of you two guys, right? Because the thing about both movies is that they were designed to actually end the Heisei movies.
Mm-hmm.
Mechagodzilla 2 was originally supposed to have a 94 release. Space Godzilla wasn't even on the table at the time, and they were going to end it right then and there. But then because Mothra did so well, they were like, oh no, we got to keep going. So I think that there are definitely some interesting debate points that you can make for either one. But I need to hear arguments first, and then I'll decide which faction I'm going to join. And I'll rip open my shirt and it'll either be Destroya or MG2 on it or something like that.
There you go. There you go. Now I personally have not actually seen these movies in a while. I haven't had the time to look them over or anything, but I remember these movies, just like anybody else. So they're one of my favorites in the Heisei series. Now, a lot of you guys know that I am a huge Heisei fan. That's my favorite era of the whole thing. So I love both these movies. So whichever movie we either go with, or whether you guys go with, and you comment below after this is done, it doesn't really matter to me. I think both movies are great. But Nico, have you seen these movies recently?
Probably as about as recent as you have.
Okay, so a couple. Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while. Yeah.
And Matt, what about you?
Been a while too. We got our Destroya review out a couple months ago, but even then we had filmed that about a year ago.
Yeah.
So it's been like a year or two.
Okay.
For both of them.
All right, cool. So yeah, we may miss some crucial details here and there, but I think ultimately we all love these movies so much that it's kind of ingrained in our minds. So of the basic big events that happen in the movies. So okay, well, we're just gonna start discussing. So let's open up. Nico, so you think Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 93 is the movie that should have been the one to end the Heisei series. So what are your opening thoughts with it?
So here, Chris, here lies within.
He's got notes. As you can
see here, I have notes here. Here lies a 10-day research paper that I've done. Now you may notice that there are no notes on these pieces of papers, and that's because that's how confident I am in my information. So you take a look at the end of the Showa saga. You have perhaps one of the most fearsome Godzilla enemies of all time, Mechagodzilla. His very first introduction, very first movie. It takes two monsters to take down Mechagodzilla. He even makes a return after the success of the first Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla movie from 74, I believe. Excuse me, was it 73 and then 74?
74, 75.
74, 75? Okay, so you take the success of the first 74 movie, like, oh my goodness, this guy was a hit. This guy's bad. We need to bring him back for another round. So that leads up to Terror of Mechagodzilla. Not only that, they both have iconic soundtracks, and even you could take it up after Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, where you have the Millennium, you bring back Kiryu twice. So they just displays the popularity of the character, and just honestly, probably how do I want to put it? This is a sports reference, the Magic Johnson and Larry Bird rivalry. There's that. There's many different avenues I could take down it. So that is the rivalry in the Godzilla universe. Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. That is my opening statement. And that's why I believe that movie was the better end.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to be as organized as that. You definitely have me on that part. But as far as Godzilla vs. Destroya is concerned, I would say that when I look at Mechagodzilla 93, because I know some people don't like it being called Mechagodzilla 2, because technically that's not right. But that Mechagodzilla, he was fine, but he was more of a tank. So, he didn't really do much. He just kind of stood there and shot a lot of beams at Godzilla. That was kind of it. But I think when it comes to Destroya, it was a really cool way to tie in the first movie, the original film, to bring back the Oxygen Destroyer and make a villain out of the Oxygen Destroyer. To me, that's like the ultimate bad guy that Godzilla can fight against, is his own thing that killed, well, I guess you could say his dad in the original, because technically it's not really the same Godzilla, but that I thought was a genius way to tie it all in. Like, if they were going to say, okay, well, we are going to make another movie to, finish this series out, then let's go all the way back. And then the fact that they brought some of the actors from the first film to reprise their roles, like, that was really cool. We got some really cool Easter eggs where they showed pictures of the original cast that obviously some of them couldn't, come back for this film. And then I know the soundtrack for Mechagodzilla 93 was great, but the Destroya soundtrack is just, that is Akira Ifukube's finest work, and I really don't think, the movie starts just like boom, when you see the logo and it pops up, and then Godzilla's just destroying the town. It's Hong Kong, right? Is that where he was at? And then we get to see Godzilla in this new design, this burning Godzilla design, and that was like, whoa, we've never seen that before. And yes, the rivalry between Godzilla and Mechagodzilla is something that's, gone down in history, but technically King Ghidorah is also like one of the bigger enemies of Godzilla. So really could go either way with those two guys. But seeing Godzilla in this burning form and having this whole it just seems more fitting that this is how Godzilla would die, is that he would have the nuclear radiation just be so much that then he would, get overflown, explode or melt or whatever. And I think the stakes that were raised in the film, some of them thinking that Godzilla was going to be an actual atomic bomb going off and destroying the world, which is just insane. Or he was going to melt down because of, the critical mass or whatever. So I think all those elements going into making the final act of this and a relatively consistent series. I know we won't really want to talk about King Ghidorah because that kind of messed up the continuity a little bit. But ignoring that one, really, this is I think it's a more natural way to end it than if Mechagodzilla was over here shooting those little things at his second brain and killing him that way. Because I feel the king of the monsters getting killed by that would have been really sucky, compared to him actually going out on his own, melting down. And by the ways, the death scene, come on. It doesn't matter how old you are. You can be a old man and still cry at the Godzilla death scene in Destroya. I can get kind of sad when it comes to Mechagodzilla and him dying, but not as bad as the meltdown scene, especially with that music. So that's going to be my opening statement on that.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I still need to hear more from the both of you, but I'm actually, believe it or not, if I'm to be completely honest, I'm kind of leaning more on MG2 at the moment, because I'm suddenly remembering all the Destroya things, because Destroya is filled with some beautiful moments. The best moments in Destroya probably outshine most of the other Heisei movies, but the movie's a mess. However, still saying that, Mechagodzilla 93 is also somewhat similar, right? 93 could have easily have gone through another round of editing, in order to condense it a little bit, make it a little bit more, faster paced, that kind of thing. But I really I never considered what Nico had said about ending the Heisei series like the Showa series, but ending it with his most powerful foe, arguably, up till that point. and you know, it kind of it would parallel the series nicely had that happened. You know what I mean? Um, but yeah, with Destroyer though, but then you have the whole oxygen destroyer thing, and you have those connections and stuff. It's really hard to say. I got major problems with both movies. I got a Destroyer B2 poster autograph like hanging up right here.
Mm.
Like I love that poster to death. But like in both of the reviews that are on the channel, like both my buddy Brian and I just ripped those movies to shreds.
Mhm.
But there are some fantastic moments in there. But at the moment, like, I suppose maybe even it's really kind of the imagination running wild about, man, what if Mechagodzilla had ended the Heisei series? What if that would have looked like, right? Because it wouldn't have been um the movie that we got, for one, right?
Mhm.
But then we just look at what happened after that, and they were already out of steam, Space Godzilla. And I know
Yeah.
that movie's been kind of, getting a lot more love lately. And fair enough, I think every Godzilla movie has
I like that film.
aspects. Yeah, every Godzilla movie has aspects you can be like, oh yeah, like that's really cool. But like I remember even reading earlier this year an article again from like 92, 93 in one of the Godzilla magazines that was just saying that they were kind of running out of ideas. They had, nothing more to give. And I kind of feel Space Godzilla was in a lot of ways the same as Destroya, where it was like there's all these good ideas, they never go anywhere,
Mhm.
and it kind of feels like a 70s movie. It's so like it's very heavy on the story, in the beginning, and then the entire back end is just like one giant battle. And for some people that's fun, that's cool,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? But I think that was definitely the point to where they just realized it's like, yeah, we don't have anything else after this. Like we
Right.
need to absolutely end this. So I still need more convincing, but I think I'm more Team Nico on this at the moment.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think the next topic that we can look at is we can kind of break the films down to different categories. So I get like the first thing we can talk about is probably just overall story for both films and just how they both, portrayed, the characters and all that stuff and the events. So, Nico, what are your thoughts on both films in terms of the story? Like, do you think that either one would have like has more longevity, like timelessness to it? Which one do you think is better in terms of story? Be honest, because I know you're going to be a little biased with this.
In being perfectly honest, I think with more with the story that has the better construction and the better storytelling, I think it's Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2. Me personally, if you Godzilla versus Destroya, although I do love like the idea of Destroya, of him being the oxygen destroyer, but Destroya is more of a cameo character than an actual villain. He's kind of just this evil guy flying around and destroys a couple buildings and just gets his ass kicked by Godzilla. That's pretty much the whole. As I watch the movie, that's what it feels like.
Mhm.
It's just a cameo character reprising an evil role, and it's just there. There's not much to it other than that. And the whole story just revolves around Godzilla's going to melt down. We need to stop it.
Right.
But we have this other monster. We don't care about him. He's just going to destroy the city. But we're needing more focus on Godzilla, and that's where I'm kind of like, that's not okay. Whereas in Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2, their goal is to be like, okay, we need to stop Godzilla. This is our ultimate weapon. And I want to bring up the fact that you said completely ignore King Ghidorah, because that King Ghidorah film actually what brought us Mechagodzilla 2. They utilized
It's
the
true.
Mecha King
That is true.
Ghidorah metal for Mechagodzilla 2. And what makes Mechagodzilla 2 so badass, in my opinion, and the best Mechagodzilla, is because that was the one character to really bring all and everything. So you described him as a tank. Yes, he is a tank. Yes, he doesn't move a lot, but the fact that he is a tank and he's able to take all of Godzilla's attacks, the first battle I think is a very good starting point. You're automatically seeing, you're like, oh shit, this guy, this enemy is the real deal. He knows of Godzilla's weak points. He aims for those weak points, and essentially Godzilla's almost dead right there on the site. But there were malfunctions in the system, and ultimately Godzilla wins that first encounter. The humans go back. They're like, okay, here's the problem with that. Here's the problem with that specific battle. Here's what happened. We're going to go back, fix it, and then use Garuda to form Super Mechagodzilla. So in that second encounter, we saw those things, that problem just disappear, completely disappear. And this is where we get the first encounter of Super Mechagodzilla. And Super Mechagodzilla absolutely wrecked his shit. He exploited Godzilla's weaknesses again. And Godzilla, being Godzilla, only has so much. He can only do so much. Mechagodzilla is a very range-based
Oh yeah.
offensive kaiju. Yeah. So as long as he kept his distance, it's over. Godzilla could not do anything. His atomic beam didn't work. Nothing. And that's what perfectly describes, I think, his perhaps arguably his toughest enemy of all time is the '93 Mechagodzilla. And just the way the humans develop Mechagodzilla, to combat Godzilla and evolve him throughout the story, really what sets up even the future Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, Kiryu, those movies. Because if you take a look at that, I don't think Kiryu has won a first encounter. There has been a problem with Kiryu in Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. There's a problem with that because he hears Godzilla's roar and the DNA, the bone structure, it awakens this thing in Kiryu and he starts acting like the original Godzilla.
It's also the battery
There's
of
been
him.
problems.
He runs out of energy too. That's an issue.
Yeah. Obviously, that is a big issue, and but essentially, that kind of shapens out how this is the first time we've seen humans kind of adapt to the situation at hand. So, and just not to mention this baby Godzilla, and how that's incorporated with Rodan. I will admit, I thought that was a little bit confusing at first.
Yeah, a little far-fetched.
Just how that whole situation, how that handles things a little bit, but because of that, we also got introduced to a new concept, the red spiral beam, which I thought was.
Oh, that's right. That was the film that introduced that, didn't it?
Yeah,
that's right.
It's a whole brand new take. It's just like, okay, Godzilla's back to life now because Rodan died and all of his energy essentially concentrated on Godzilla, and that is like the ultimate. That's his spirit bomb. That is his final move. That is his fatality. The spiral red beam, and that is the weapon to destroy Mechagodzilla 2. And yeah, that is my standpoint on why I think Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 does have the better. I shouldn't say it has a more constructed story, so I guess I would call it better. Yes, that's where I sit right now.
Well, to be honest, I actually would have to agree with you. I actually do think that the story is a lot more focused, and it is interesting. And I like how you brought up the idea that the humans actually learned this time on how to looking from that first battle, let's try to do something different. So I actually agree with you. I do think that film has a more structured plot going forward. I think the pacing of that film, if I remember it correctly, was engaging a lot more than it was with Destroya. With Destroya, there were a lot. I mean, I think what the thing is in Destroya, there's a lot of bombastic moments. Like there's a lot of just amazing scenes that are just crazy, but they're very few and far between. The rest of it is very quiet and it's kind of boring, to be honest. Like a lot of those parts are boring. Then again, though, with Mechagodzilla 2, it was a lot of the military jargon that we just all know and love, that they have that for the majority of the film as well. A bunch of guys in suits just talking blah 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 blah. But yeah, the idea that they did bring back the armor and they kind of had some of that continuity from Mecha King Ghidorah, which was pretty cool. The baby Godzilla thing with Rodan, that relationship I thought was so weird. I never understood that. I was like, so does that mean Rodan is now a relative of Godzilla and like that species or something? Like, where's this, like, what's the science behind that? That was a little interesting. But no, I think it does have a more structured story. Destroya, though, on the other hand, there are still like those bombastic moments, though. They're just epic. Like that is what those scenes are. When Destroya first is in his last form, in that shot where his wings are spread out, the lightning and the smoke effects are fighting behind him, and the music playing. I mean, that's just like you're like, okay, Godzilla's in it. But and we'll talk about this, I guess, later when we talk about the actual monsters themselves. But yes, I do feel like Destroya is not as tough as Mechagodzilla was in these films, like compared, And I feel like if there was a point where Mechagodzilla would have to fight Destroya, I feel like Mechagodzilla would win. because he has all those attacks that he can do at a range. And Destroya doesn't move neither. I mean, he's a one because it's the suit itself, but him as, let's just say, if it wasn't a suit, if it was really just him without any design changes, yeah, he is kind of this big fat monster that can't really, move much. The only thing that he would have is if he could fly directly towards Mechagodzilla and like maybe grab him with his tail, that little claw tail thing at the end, and drag him. But I mean, I think as far as the story is concerned, I actually do think I enjoyed Mechagodzilla 2's story a little bit more, just because it had more of that traditional Godzilla feeling to it. But I don't think it has many of those bombastic moments that Destroya does. So it's kind of like a take it or leave it deal. It's like, do you want a more subtle like story that you can follow with some really cool action parts, or do you just want this crazy bombastic part? But it's like very few and far between with each part. But I agree. I actually do think Mechagodzilla 2 had a better story.
Yeah, thinking about Destoroyah, all I remember is just all those story points that never got resolved. Micro Oxygen and Junior, Godzilla's power now surpasses the Oxygen Destroyer. Like there was all these, again, so many ideas, but never actually explained or all that cohesive or anything of that nature. Mostly due to Omori, I would say, the screenwriter for this one. He directed Biollante and also King Ghidorah, wrote Mothra as well, 92. With Mech and Chris, you were talking about those moments again, and again, I do think that Destoroyah has the strongest moments of both these movies, if not, again, the entire Heisei series.
Yeah.
But the rest of it is just, it's all over the place.
It's boring, yeah.
The special effects are uneven, even though there's some like incredibly amazing parts. I just think back about those little toy, Desto Toyas, running around in that one military scene. It just was like, okay. But if you guys are really all about like, well, let's talk about like, Godzilla's greatest foe. Is it King Ghidorah, or is it Mechagodzilla, or is it, Destoroyah? Guys, it's humanity. It's humanity. That has always been Godzilla's greatest opponent. He's always going up against humanity, which in turn would then go towards, I would say, Mechagodzilla, which is, the epitome of, human technology up until that point, Now, whether or not they really deliver on those themes, and of course, that's a big, debate or whatever. But yeah, it would have been, sorry, my phone's going off. I think Destoroyah really made things epic, but I don't think that it made it as cohesive or as comprehensive as Mechagodzilla 2 is, despite the fact that Mechagodzilla 2 is boring as shit sometimes.
Yeah.
Like I said, could have gone through that editor to make it a little bit faster.
Right.
But whether or not, if Mechagodzilla 2 had been, like the end per se, like it's all speculation, because maybe it would have sucked, I mean, I think there was that rumor that if it did end, Godzilla was going to die then, and Baby was going to swim off to sea. I've heard different stories about that. I've heard that was pitched. I've heard whatever. But at least in Mechagodzilla 2, Godzilla gets to defeat the main enemy.
Yes, that's another thing. That's right. Destroyer gets killed by the military.
Dude, Destoroyah. This big monster who just killed his son flies up and he gets taken down by a couple freeze missiles.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, oh my god.
I do remember that. Yeah.
So I think I'm leaning more towards MG2, man. I'm sorry. I love you, Chris. I love you.
No. Well, that I did. Like I said, I agree with him on the story part. Yeah, I do. It is. Yeah.
We are reawakening all this like Destoroyah like criticism in me right now, because I'm just like, oh yeah, that happened. I hated that.
Yeah. I think that, so the next thing, so with the story wise, so we got that nailed down. So I think the next thing we can talk about is characters. I think let's talk about the human characters, because that's something that I think in Godzilla films that not a lot of people talk about. And actually, Nico, last year on my own channel, we had a tier list where we talked about the human villains, like not monster villains, human villains. And I think that was such an interesting discussion to have, because no one talks about the villains that are the actual like antagonists of the heroes that are trying to do stuff. But as far as the human characters are concerned in these two films, those are the next thing we can talk about. So Nico, which cast do you think also was better in these two films?
Honestly, I personally think the casts are pretty on par. You have the reprising role of the pilot from the Garuda into the Super X3.
Mhm.
You have him returning. You have Mickey from basically every single Heisei
Heisei,
Godzilla
yep.
film. Yeah, returning. So it's not a matter of which movie had the better acting to me. It's a matter of which one had the strongest like performance, and I think it all comes down to Mickey
Yeah.
and how her character was portrayed in the movie. And I'm sticking with my guns. I'm sticking with Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2. The way she was forced into the situation, she's pro Godzilla. She knows how Godzilla feels constantly throughout all the entire Heisei era. And the way they utilize her in Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2, she's forced in a situation where she has to kill something that she loves so much and that she cherishes. And I think that was a beautiful way, to. And I think that's a real that would tug on your strings of your
Oh yeah.
heartstrings. That could be a tearjerker if that was actually the end of Godzilla, if that were to happen. And even then, she's not. I thought she would have a little bit more to do with Baby, but I'm actually glad that wasn't the case. That she wasn't just babysitting Baby Godzilla the entire time. And I remember this actually has nothing to do. I'm not sure if she was involved in the scene or not, but when they gathered when one of the main characters who was taking care of Baby, gathered the small elementary children and
Oh
brought them to sing for
yeah.
Baby Godzilla. Don't get me started. Don't get me wrong. I love the soundtrack to Godzilla vs. Destroya. I love the soundtrack to this movie, but I don't think any other Godzilla movie has given me the chills than when I hear that song. And as the song's playing, it cuts to Rodan being essentially revived because of the song and gets a power up, and
Hmm.
Baby's just going crazy. I think that by far is just I've never seen a scene in Godzilla like that. I've never seen a Godzilla movie like that shot. A specific scene in a Godzilla movie, period, that has been shot like that, where music starts playing and it cuts to a completely different environment. And I just think it is a beautiful scene that gave me goosebumps. I absolutely love that scene. And then, but I digress a little bit. I'm going a little bit off topic because I'm going to just go into music, but that is my standpoint. It's not a matter of which movie had the better acting, who had the better acting, but it definitely falls on to Mickey and what her role and which performance was stronger. That's what it falls for me.
Well, yeah, and damn it, it's funny. I know I'm in the corner of Destroy over here, but at the same time, when you say that the cast, at least the characters themselves, the actors themselves, I mean, I can't really fully judge them because I haven't seen the Japanese versions as many times as I've seen the English dub version. So really, when I look at those characters, all I hear is the really horrendous English acting that was going on. But as far as the characters themselves, I can't remember a single character's name or what their personality was and their struggles and conflicts and things that were going on in either film. The only character that I remember is Mickey. And when it is specifically when it does come to Mechagodzilla 2, I think the usage of her character in that film I was so much better than it was utilized in Destroy. And I actually remember this from actually Matt, your review on Destroy, how you were saying that Mickey in Destroy was basically what was her point in that film. Was that a point you brought up in your review or something, or was it where I just remember somewhere I heard that her like she didn't really have much to do in Destroy, did she?
She didn't have anything to do in Destroya.
Right.
She
So
really didn't.
she's just kind of an onlooker on Junior, just kind of
She
watching what he's
she
doing.
she babysits.
Right.
She
Yeah.
babysits. That's what it is. I hate
So
to say it, but
So in like that's the only point I can give Mechagodzilla 2 is the fact that Mickey's character usage in that one was way better utilized than it was in Destroya. But I actually kind of for both movies I just don't remember the cast that well. Honestly, the cast I remember the most from this era would be, well, 84 because I'm just biased towards that one. King Ghidorah, because that cast was just really fun to watch, especially with the villains, and Space Godzilla because of Yuki. Like I just like those are those characters I just love and remember, and they leave an impact on you. But when it comes to these two ones, the only character I remember is Mickey, and that's kind of a problem because she's a reoccurring character throughout the whole series. So in a way, I can't really give a point to either film because the new characters they introduce or any other kind, like the only thing I can think of was those characters that came back from the first, the older actors. Oh gosh, was it the wife of the doctor guy from the first film who was in Destroya? She had the picture of I don't remember his name, Doctor Yes. Ooh, yeah, he was the researcher. I think he didn't want to kill Godzilla in 1954. He was the scientist guy who wanted to study him.
So it was like
Yafume?
Yamamoto.
Yeah, some I can't remember his name.
Are you talking? Oh man, it's been a while.
Yeah, I'm not good with character names in Godzilla. Like when it comes to the humans.
You're talking about the older lady in this, right?
Yeah, the older lady, the cameo. She was essentially a cameo from the first film.
That was Emiko. That was
Emiko. That's right.
Serizawa was, supposed to wed.
Trying to get her, yeah.
With Kira Takarada.
That's right. That's yeah. So like, her part was really cool because that's just fanfare right there. That ooh, we remember her. That's cool. But yeah, I can't really give any points because it's just like what these films brought to the table in terms of new characters. I just didn't care. I mean, I do remember the kid, the student, the college kid or whatever from Destroy, who the military picks up because he has some skills or intelligence on what the hell's going on, and then obviously the doctor guy or the scientist guy who made the oxygen or who replicated it or whatever. But I was never like worried for these characters. I was never like connected to them to where I was rooting for them, where I was like, oh no, but it was really only Mickey. And yeah, in Mechagodzilla 2, yeah, her parts where she had to pull the trigger on those cables that shot into Godzilla, and then when she had to, do the thing to destroy his second brain, yeah, that part was sad. And I do agree, Nico. I feel like if they did end it, it probably would have been maybe a tearjerker, just like the meltdown scene was, if that's how they were to play it. So I don't know. I'm kind of mixed on that because really it's only Mickey, and Mickey's a reoccurring character through the whole series. So it's kind of a weird moot point at that. It's like, well, I mean, obviously I would give it to Mechagodzilla because of the way they utilized her in that one, but the way the other movies utilized her was also pretty good. I mean, in the other films as well. So I mean, like Biollante, she was utilized really well too. So it's just kind of like, well, I don't know, but on a technicality, I would say Mechagodzilla 2, yes. But on both films, I really can't say when it comes to the cast of characters. I don't remember. I just don't remember them. So.
Well, yeah, just to expand on that point, both casts suck because they are unmemorable.
Yeah.
I know it's such a cliche, and people on Twitter seem to get their panties in a bunch when you say that. There's a lot of Godzilla movies that don't have memorable characters.
It's a lot of them. It is.
It is a lot of them.
Yeah.
And there are so many people out there. It's become very popular, I think, in the past couple of years to bash on the Heisei series, especially because it's like Miki Sagusa is awful and the characters are bad. And meanwhile, they're sitting here, championing all these Showa films,
which have just horrendous.
It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
But you have a lot of armchair film critics and film analysts that like to really try to make their point and spout out a whole bunch of academic data or whatever. The only character I remember from Mechagodzilla 2 is Pteranodon. That's the guy that had the Pteranodon fetish, like almost
that's right.
weird level. Yeah. Right. It was bizarre how obsessed he was.
Yeah, he was.
But on the same note, Desoroya, I don't remember a freaking thing. I remember the younger psychic. I remember all that stuff. But I don't remember names or anything. As far as Mickey goes, both films actually feature the only time where she's kind of conflicted about, it's like, oh, do I kill Godzilla or don't I? Oh, do I lead Junior to his death or don't I? And like, there's definitely like interesting possibilities there, but I don't feel like either film really earned the right to get to that point, because yes, there is conflict, and conflict creates that's what creates interesting characters.
Mm-hmm.
It's why I always love when there's actually human antagonists within the Godzilla story that are like
I
interacting
know.
with each other and stuff, because that just makes things much more interesting. I know it's sacrilege to compliment City on the Edge of Battle, because that's the worst thing ever. But like even in like the finale of that, where Haruo is like kind of like conflicted with if he's going to destroy Godzilla and let the Bill of Saludo like take over the world, or kill the Bill of Saludo, but yet Godzilla live. Like that's interesting. It might
Yeah.
not be the best thing in the world, but it's way more interesting
Than
than
what this is.
deciding if she's gonna shoot this thing and use the force to shoot this thing into Godzilla's secondary brain. So it's just a fact of these movies. I think it's a factor that we all kind of we just shrug and we're like, we like it.
Yeah.
But I also think that we got to recognize, I'm not saying anybody here, but I think that we have to recognize that, a lot of the writing in these movies aren't necessarily the end all be all. I think there are better examples of like, hey, these are really good and that's really good. I mean, look at the Heisei movies compared to the Heisei Gamera trilogy. I would argue,
Oh yeah.
in Guardians or Guardian of the Universe are way more memorable,
Leaks.
just on a character and acting level than most of these movies, and they certainly have better continuity in terms of that too. So yeah, just a lot of missed opportunities. Mickey was a huge missed opportunity. I don't think it was the actress's fault at all. I don't know. I still don't know why they constantly brought her back. Because it was usually for just a cameo, and then
Right.
it was in Mechagodzilla 2 that she was like took a little bit more part in the action. Space Godzilla way more. Destoroyah scaled way back, which just felt so weird. You know
Right.
what I mean? Follow her. She had the chops. We already knew who she was. She was an interesting character. She was a psychic who, had this history with Godzilla as she grew up, essentially witnessing all this incredible stuff.
Yeah.
But anyways, getting off topic. Both casts sucked.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
And I gotta give a quick shout out to Final Wars because I always love that cast. That's just I always gotta give a shout out to Final Wars. That's just you come on, the villain in that is just so good.
He is good. I do like the villain. I like the main villain.
I mean
He's very
that
good.
human fight. I don't care how Matrixy or Dragon Ball Z it is. That final battle between the humans in a Godzilla film might have been more entertaining than Godzilla fighting Monster X. Just saying it. Anyways, okay. I'm on that would get me on a tangent. All right, the next thing we talk about is music. I think music is a big part of that. I mean, to me personally, I mean, probably to you guys as well. Godzilla has always been synonymous with music to me. I feel like the soundtracks have never been bad in any Godzilla film. Like no matter what it is. Like I love Godzilla's Revenge. You can say what you will about that, but the soundtrack, as soon as you hear the first note, you know exactly what film that's coming from. Son of Godzilla had a very playful soundtrack. To me, it's just any soundtrack was great. And when it came to these two films, they were both done by Akira Ifukube, correct?
Yes.
Pretty sure, right? Yeah. So that's what's kind of tough with this one. But Nico, I'll let you go first.
I don't even know where to start because I just think these two movies are just so on par. They are so on par in terms of soundtrack. Like you have the infamous intro to Godzilla entering Hong Kong. You have that. You have the Requiem, and the Requiem being the death scene.
Yeah, the meltdown scene.
And then
yeah,
the Godzilla death scene, and then you have the rolling the end credits. I thought that was beautifully done.
Yes.
I personally, that is my favorite. Like that's my favorite track of any like Godzilla soundtrack album, whatever
it had to be.
That is my all-time favorite track.
Yeah,
because it just culminates a lot of different songs of Godzilla's past into one. And then, but you then take a look at Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2. You have the infamous the '93 Mechagodzilla theme song, which is when you see that intro where it's basically they give you an introduction of like, okay, here's what the humans are doing right now. You're getting you're seeing big plans. You have a bit of a hype up music, and then once you see like the 3D model of Mechagodzilla show up with the chrome being spit on him, and then you see this white flash, and then it cuts to Mechagodzilla 2 with its theme song, dun 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 dun.
Yeah,
and it's just that's another That's another great track, and they really utilize it a lot they really put it in your brain.
It's the
Engraved
theme for
like this
sure.
is him. Yes, like any sort of like move out they do with him, that's the theme played. And um and then I'm going to go back and say the most goosebumps I ever had listening to a song is that kid's like harmonic scene, orchestra scene, whatever scene it is called. That song just gives me chills. Just I get a tingle down my spine, and it is just a wild scene just from just the voices of like little children. And even within Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2 also brings in the junior scene, the junior theme song. So it's probably more recognized in Godzilla vs. Destroya, where Godzilla walks up to Junior as he's dying.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably where it's most recognized. But Mechagodzilla 2 brought it onto the table. That's where it's first introduced during the interaction of the female character who's babysitting baby.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm personally, I'm stuck on both of those soundtracks. That's just a really hard question to ask. If I would, I'm sticking with my guns though. I'm sticking with them, Chris.
I
I'm
knew you
sticking
would.
with it. I'm sticking with it.
Oh, he's got visual aids over here. Oh, look at this guy.
I'm sticking with it, baby. I'm sticking with it. I'm
Oh
sticking with it.
God.
And that's it. That's it. That's my final standpoint. And it's like I'm like I said, it's a very hard thing to just compare with these two movies because they're just so unique and so iconic in so many different ways within the Godzilla community. But I'm sticking with Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. Although I am not gonna be a fan. I'm not gonna say a fan. I'm not gonna be surprised if you choose Godzilla vs. Destroy because that is a beautiful soundtrack too. Easy.
Yes, this one I will have to disagree with you. I do think Destroya's soundtrack is just the most. It is Akira Fukube's finest work he's ever done, and I think when he knew that this was going to be his final film, he knew he had to do something that was like, I have, and that end credits song is just like, it is his work embodied into music and everything that the Godzilla franchise was up until that point, because it was supposed to, we weren't supposed to have the Millennium series, so that was it. Akira Fukube went in there going, if this is the last thing that people hear of Godzilla, this is going to be my magnum opus, like all that stuff. And I mean, the movie just opening with the Hong Kong scene and just the blaring the I don't know, I'm not good with the instrument names, but just the bass playing, the brass, and all the strings playing in that part, just goosebumps every time that intro plays. And the thing I love about this Heisei series is the intro title cards, the CGI cinematic, like the way that they're just formed and everything. I love that era. Like I loved how they continued that in the Millennium series, but just when the logo popped up and then the music blaring, and just throughout the film just had so many of those really good track, even like the Military March soundtracks, because I know like some of them had like some different variations on them, but like that one I loved most. The Requiem track is probably, I mean, I don't even have to have a visual aid for that sound. Like every time I hear that track, I mean, it just in my head, I'm watching the film as it's playing, and I just instantly get this. I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna get tearing up because because it's just that kind of track. When it comes to Mechagodzilla 2, it does have a strong opening too. I agree. When they're showing the schematics and Mechagodzilla 2 being built and the music's being played and all that, that was very masterfully put together and edited. And then the white flash, and then you see him in his full form, and then the camera pans out, and then the logo pops in again. But the thing is, other than that main track and the one that you were talking about with the kids with the choir singing, I can't really remember much else in terms of the soundtrack with that film. I would have to go back and actually just listen to the soundtrack to then be like, oh, okay, I remember that one. But when it comes to Destroya, like I remember lots of those tracks, the Military March, the main theme, when Destroya first pops up in his final form. I'm not talking about the little crab forms, but and then the Requiem track, and then the end credits track. It's just like, that movie just kept on. Every time music would be playing, it would let itself be known. Even in the quiet scenes, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's some like masterfully put together stuff. So I would have to stick with my guns for this with Destroya, is that soundtrack is probably the best in the whole franchise up until that point.
Yeah, I think Destoroyah takes this one a whole lot. I'm not saying this as a negative, but a lot of FAQ based stuff I find to be pretty repetitive. I think I'm not saying that as a negative. I'm just saying that as a fact.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that both movies have some really incredible tracks. Mechagodzilla's theme. I mean, just that opening is absolutely gorgeous. But then I think about like, well, what other music is there? It's like, oh yeah, you got Rodan's theme, you got Godzilla's theme, Baby's theme, and then that's kind of it. You
Mm-hmm.
know, um, Destoroyah, it's kind of the same thing, but you have Burning Godzilla, Destoroyah. Junior's theme comes back. You have the end credits. You have the military march for the Super X3, and both tracks are really good. But I think that there's more variation in Destoroyah. I think it's more vivid,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it in some cases it even feels more correct for its movie. It feels very apocalyptic. Godzilla's theme is in there, but he has a brand new theme, with that burning Godzilla theme. He's dying,
Yeah.
and you can just feel it, it almost feels like he's just marching to his death. I don't know. It's pretty epic stuff. But yeah, Destoroyah takes this round for me.
Yeah. So, all right. So I think in terms of, but before we get into the monsters themselves, because I know we could talk about them for hours. I think one of the other last few things I could think of in terms of categories for these films would be special effects wise. I mean, that's kind of tricky because I looked at a lot of the films in the Heisei series as it's very inconsistent with the special effects on each movie. Like from 84 to 95, it's just like all these films have a variation of like you can tell like where their budget was at. It's like, oh, in this film they had this much money, in this film they had that much money. So I don't know if that would be a category we're talking about. What do you guys think? Like, do you think that is even something?
Uh, I I personally think that the latter films, so like these next three, and we'll include Biolante and King Ghidorah. So I guess there's really only and 84. I guess the only outlier is just Godzilla versus Mothra. I think that one's like the worst with special effects by far.
That's just because it's
Uh,
Mothra. I'm sorry.
yeah, I'm being honest.
But
Like there's
that
some cool.
Batra larva suit though, man, come on.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I do like the transformation scene there where he goes from the larva to his
Yeah.
adult form. I think that was very clean. I thought
Yeah.
that was extremely clean. Whatever was done there, and so I think we could dive in a little bit into special effects. Um, I think it's kind of hard.
I guess we could say like which film is more consistent with the special effects?
Consistent with special effects. Oh man.
Talking about Kawakita's work, consistency doesn't exist. I
As
will say this about
consistent as possible.
just real quick. I think, and I'm not trying to knock Kawakita. I actually like Kawakita stuff. I think Kawakita, given money and time, can produce some amazing things. Just look at Biolante. I think
Yeah.
Biolante is unlike anything for the rest of the
Oh,
series.
yeah.
The way it's shot, all that stuff. I think Kawakita, despite the fact that everyone always complains about the Beam War stuff, I think he is a master at optical effects. Nico, I know you said, versus Mothra as like the worst. And I would agree with you. The thing that sticks out in my mind is like when Godzilla and Mothra are fighting, in close quarters, and Godzilla shoots his beam and it reflects in the scales and all that stuff. And just thinking of that visual and the amount of work that went into, again, just the optics. But there's also a bunch of crazy optical effects in like I think what is it, Mothra 2? I think he also did. I think he did the first two Mothra films, and those
Okay.
were also filled with crazy stuff. I think towards the end, I think he was getting pretty complacent. I think it was because of, again, budget and time. But with Destoroyah, they did get a couple of extra months, or there was some extra time that they got, because when Gamera came out, Kawakita saw that, 95, and it was like, oh shit, like we gotta kind of up our game. So you see more CGI effects in there.
Yeah.
And there's different things that he's actually trying to push the envelope a little bit. Now I do think that Higuchi is a better technician than Kawakita is, but I think that Kawakita was trying, and Kawakita did have his strong points. It's so much in this fandom we just say, one is better than the other, but we don't, actually just look at them on a film by film basis. You know what I mean? But I think Destoroyah has the more advanced effects, and I also think, honestly, I think that they were really trying to top themselves with that one because that was it. That they knew he was going out, But at the same time, you look at the end sequence of like Mechagodzilla 2 with the red spiral death beam, and you got the glitter and the pyrotechnics and this just massive radioactive red burst just streaking across the ground. I mean, it's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. So they both had their high points, but I think Destoroyah, I think they were really trying to make that one special, in comparison to what came before it.
Yeah.
So I'm actually both films, because I haven't seen either of them. I think we're doing very well on both sides, despite not seeing these films.
I know, yeah.
And quite a bit.
I'm remembering more as we talk about it too.
Yeah. I'm gonna hone in on some key scenes just from both films. I'm gonna hone in. I'm gonna start with Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 because that's just what I'm starting with right now.
Well, of course.
The way the film was shot, and all the close-ups of Godzilla, and you see him. I thought it was always really cool to see him foaming out of his mouth. I don't know why. I thought that's a really good special effect. And seeing Mechagodzilla 2's his Godzilla's beam deflecting off Mechagodzilla 2's armor. I don't know how the hell you do that back then, because that's typically in Godzilla movies, it's nothing's really exactly deflected off anything. It just kind of explodes and then just nothing happens.
Right.
But with this, you had the to somehow deflect the beam off it to make it seem like, it's not doing anything. And then you also have the more practical effects of the G bust,
G Buster?
the G
right?
Crusher.
Oh, no.
The G Crusher. The G Crusher. That's what it's called. The G Buster, I think, was the stomach.
Oh, the stomach beam. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, the stomach beam. Yeah, the G Crusher. You have that practical effect where it's just stabbing Godzilla. And I thought that was very good. And even some of the more practical effects with Rodan, where Godzilla is choking Rodan, and you see this green blood spitting out. So I'm going to agree with Matt that Destroy has the more advanced effects, because you do have when they're when Godzilla's being shot with frozen, you have all this smoke and you have to detail the Godzilla suit as it's freezing, and that's a lot of work. And then when Destroyer's up in the air, they shoot poor scene, just the way it ended. But when Destroyer's getting shot with the freezer tanks and falls to the ground, I thought that was a really good special effects scene. And even Destroyer's intro is very well done. And the more I'm thinking about it, in grand style, when we're first introduced to the final form of Destroyer, the first encounter with Mechagodzilla 2, when you land and you see this big bright flash of light behind Mechagodzilla 2, and you see the dark side of this figure just with these glowing red eyes, and he just roars. I thought that was badass, just after landing, because it's kind of the same style that Mecha King Ghidorah showed up in that same sense. So, and this goes on to the final battle between Mechagodzilla 2 and Godzilla, where when Rodan dies and lands on Godzilla and just slowly fades away into all the glitter, and you have glitter everywhere. You have this golden aurora just filling out the entire landscape. And even then, with all that glitter included, you have the Super Mechagodzilla burning because of all the radiation.
Oh yeah,
all the flakes and
the
you see it smoking. Yeah. I thought that was very well done. That's honest. That scene itself is probably on par with Destroyer. The final scene between Godzilla, the meltdown scene with Godzilla. I think that those two scenes are on par in terms of special effects, because they were both so well done with the practical effects. It's just that's it's a hard question. Both the movie special effects they each have their niche. I think Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 was definitely better in the practical category, just with blood and choke and the foam coming out of the mouths and such. But in Vez effects, it's Destroya. I think they kind of par out on each other because of that. So it's just that's why I'm at. But
You think like a tie?
practical, yeah. I'm going to. It's again with the soundtracks. I'm going to lean towards Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 because we get those close-ups, of the monsters and more practical effects that make it seem a little more real than what it actually is, a little more real. So I'm going to lean towards Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, but like I said with the soundtrack, if you do go towards Godzilla vs. Destroya, I'm not going to be like offended or shocked.
I'm gonna use my original argument that the fact that Destroy is more of a bombastic film, and I think that when it comes to scenes like Destroya, when his final form is revealed in that scene, and then Godzilla in Hong Kong, just seeing the burning Godzilla suit there, and with all the explosions going on in Hong Kong, I just think that film just has more of those bombastic, over the top effects moments. When Mechagodzilla 2 has more subtle, kind of similar to what I said before, it's more consistent throughout the entire thing, I think, more than Destroya. But I think that I also will say that the crab scene, the alien ripoff scene of Destroya, when the military is trying to go in that little place, cool, entertaining, but dated horrendously. Like, these little puppet guys, and like you see you see that they're just they're just floating, but their legs are mechanical and they're just moving this way to make it look like they're.
Yeah, and to think a year later with Legion,
Yeah,
it's kind of night and day.
exactly. So that's what I would say when it comes to Destroya. I do think Destroya is better in terms of special effects, just because when those bombastic moments are happening, it is like eye candy. It's just, wow, that stuff is really cool to see. And also, I don't have to explain it. The meltdown scene, period. That's all I gotta do.
I also want to bring up a point for Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 when baby Godzilla is hatching. I thought that with the slime and the
Yeah.
eggshell just exploding everywhere. You just see it's like this big ball of goop. I'm just like,
Oh, actually, also when you also forgot, I know you're talking about a lot of the blood and guts happening in Mechagodzilla 2, but Destroya was also a pretty bloody thing too, because when Godzilla would slash when Destroya's thing,
yep,
his mouth thing was open, he slashed it, and the green blood's just flying out, and then Destroya barfs blood for that scene too. It's like a slow mo part. It's like bleh! It's like, ooh yeah. So that has some bloody parts too, but. I lean towards more Destroya though because of those bombastic moments. That's what I say. Anything else, Matt, to add to it?
I agree with every point you made on Destroya.
Okay. All right. So I think we're kind of like half and half. I think so far, like tallied wise, whatever. But I think, unfortunately, I know where this is going. Is where the more important factors are leaning towards, Mechagodzilla 2. I think, maybe, I don't know. But the last thing, obviously, we can talk about is the monsters. Obviously, this is what makes or breaks a Godzilla film in a lot of ways for a lot of people. So, this is where, I don't know, it could be surprising with some of us, depending on if we are biased or not. But Nico, you know me and my history with Destroya, so I think you know where I'm going to take this in terms of how I feel about him. But I'll let you go first with what you feel of the monster cast. So you have Godzilla, Mechagodzilla, and Rodan.
Oh man. So you have Godzilla, Rodan, and Mechagodzilla. 93 Mechagodzilla. I'll just call him Mechagodzilla. I'll
Fine.
throw two in there sometime.
It's a little nitpick. It doesn't matter.
Are we going to include Baby Godzilla?
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, Baby Godzilla too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot about him.
Okay, so I think the Baby Godzilla and Rodan, that relationship is kind of weird. I actually do remember why how they're related. So apparently Godzilla's DNA sort of he was a parasite to one of the missing pteranodon to the pteranodon eggs. That's what that is. So that's how they say, okay, so it just basically took over the embryo. It was just a way just to get baby Godzilla in there.
Still random.
But we're now, it's very random. Just doesn't make. Just,
I think it was a way to explain why Rodan's in this film.
Yeah. So I think they had plans on bringing in Rodan, or I don't know. They brought in Rodan regardless.
Yeah.
He hasn't been brought up before. It's like, oh, we found a missing pteranodon egg. Rodan's here. So that was that. Godzilla is Godzilla. I think the relationship between baby Godzilla and Rodan's interesting because how they're related and how they communicate with one another. Because Rodan recognizes, oh, that is like my brother. Because I'm not sure if you know this. So some birds, and this is also brought up in the movie, some birds lay their eggs in other like birds' nests. So then they confuse each other. It's like, oh, this is my baby, even though that's not the baby, or like, oh, this is my brother when it's really not. That is the case with baby and Rodan. That Rodan senses, oh, baby's in trouble. I have to go save my brother. So that leads up to the whole final encounter between Mechagodzilla and Rodan. Obviously, Mechagodzilla wins. Mechagodzilla wins handily.
What about that first scene with Rodan and Godzilla though? When they fight.
So that scene, I think it was just a bit of a warm up.
Right.
Because Godzilla just kind of shows up. Godzilla just kind of shows up. They're messing around with Godzilla's egg now at this point. Rodan, I think the egg starts glowing up actually, and Rodan just happens to show up, and along with that, Godzilla does, because when baby communicates, Godzilla and Rodan respond, which is a really interesting way for the characters to finally group up for a final battle instead of Godzilla pulling a Godzilla, be like, I am here now, because I heard the scream and I felt your power level from 500 miles away in the ocean. So we have that first fight scene because Godzilla obviously is just protecting the egg, and Rodan at the same time is protecting the egg. They're just not one of the same. Godzilla, I don't want to see it. Rodan was a bit more of an annoyance in this movie, although he does play an important role at the end. He's more of an annoyance. And baby is there as a sake to bring all the monsters together to make that final scene happen. Mechagodzilla 2 on the other end, I just want to just take aside and talk about him. Mechagodzilla 2, I know a lot of people complain about his design, like he looks derpy. People do.
It depends on the figures you buy.
People do not like Mechagodzilla 2's design, and I'm actually quite unsure why. I mean, I think the way they have it's not the most detailed, but it's supposed to be like this tanky thing. It's supposed to be sleek, clean, futuristic, and I think it shows Godzilla. If you look at the Heisei Godzilla's spines, they're all even. It's almost like they're all evened up. Mechagodzilla 2 has that. He has a short tail, and I think the Super Mechagodzilla 2 form is absolutely ridiculous. I think it's really well done how they incorporated something completely new to Mechagodzilla. I thought it was a very cool choice, and it took Mechagodzilla one step ahead of everyone else on every single enemy, every single kaiju Godzilla's ever faced, because it had that one up. It had that power up that we've never seen the enemy have before. Obviously, we had Mecha King Ghidorah, but that was even just a different iteration of essentially the same monster with its own very obvious weak points. But I will now continue on to the first encounter between Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2. You see Mechagodzilla 2 land, and I did really describe it earlier in this podcast on how this first encounter, Mechagodzilla 2, is automatically established as I am the toughest enemy you will ever face, and I'm going to kill you right now. So I'm actually going to correct myself from earlier. So they didn't hit the brain. They didn't know the brain existed. I am remembering this because baby has yet to be born. So unless I'm getting no, they have yet to know that baby was born just yet. So or baby was calling Godzilla. Baby has yet to be born. So they go in, use the G Crusher and everything. They're taking out Godzilla. Godzilla is left defenseless. The reactor is overheating because Godzilla sends some sort of response back to Mechagodzilla 2. They lose, and Godzilla continues to go towards the city to go after baby. Because baby is continuously calling. So the humans regroup. They're like, okay, that didn't work. We need to fix this problem right now, in which they did. But also in that duration, they figured out how to form Super Mechagodzilla. And that's when they did figure out, okay, we did some like deep research into baby. Godzilla has a secondary brain in his lower, I'm
It's like a
thinking
hip,
so,
right? Somewhere near his hip.
anatomical. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He has a second brain towards his hip on the right side. So for the humans to make that sort of advancements, to be like, okay, this is what you're doing. We have taken all the precautions and all the steps to ensure that we will get the job done this time. So they plan to move baby somewhere. I forget where they're transporting baby to. He's in a helicopter. Baby starts crying, and then Rodan shows up. Rodan has his massive power up. Rodan shows up
Yeah,
to
'cause he's
save his
Fire
little
Rodan
brother.
now.
Yeah, he is now Fire Rodan, officially Fire Rodan. A new iteration of Rodan, something we've never seen before. So this movie in and of itself has brought in a lot of new scenarios that we have never seen before in a Godzilla movie. Uh, Not scenarios, but new power-ups, a lot of
Yeah,
new
power ups. Yeah.
ideas. And I think they executed it very well. Um, well, despite the relationship between Baby Godzilla and Rodan, that's I understand I confused a lot of people. I made a connection with the way the movie describes it. So you have Rodan show up to save baby, and they're like, okay, Rodan's here. We need to send out Mechagodzilla 2. Mechagodzilla 2 shows up. Rodan is once again more of an annoyance than an actual foe. And being in Rodan style in this movie, he's just used for that final scene. Just more of an annoyance. I I keep going back and forth on this. I still it's still like a cool concept that baby goes to try and or Rodan goes to try to save baby Godzilla because he recognizes him as his brother. So Rodan's taken out. Godzilla shows up because baby's crying. Then we have that first encounter. We see that Godzilla's starting to get the upper hand. He is close range combat. He's kicking Mechagodzilla 2's ass. Mechagodzilla 2 goes down, and we see the heroics of the Garuda flying in and starting to take a big of a hit on Godzilla. You know, using its mobility and keeping its distance. Godzilla's weak point, aside from using atomic breath, and I believe that is deemed ineffective as well. I could be wrong. I
No, I think he
believe
got
actually
annihilated pretty quick. Because it like didn't it
the
like spiral out of control. The Garuda like he blasted
yeah
it and
yeah
he spiraled and land
the
crashed.
Garuda just yes the Garuda spirals out of control momentarily. Mechagodzilla 2, I think rockets into Godzilla, taking out Godzilla. Like they get him off the ground, flying towards him, and takes out Godzilla. Now we have the ultimate battle, the ultimate enemy. If you ask me, the ultimate enemy we have that Godzilla has to face is Super Mechagodzilla. Literally the perfect
What?
the perfect war machine. You have the perfect war machine to take out Godzilla, utilizing all of its power with Mickey controlling its deadliest weapon, the G Crusher. So Godzilla gets back up to encounter this new foe, Super Mechagodzilla. Godzilla is trying to use his atomic beam. It's not working. They're keeping their distance, and you just see this barrage of weaponry. Basically everything they have in their arsenal, and they are just absolutely killing Godzilla. Godzilla falls to the ground. They prepare the G Crusher. They then set off the G Crusher. It perfectly hits the brain in Godzilla's hip and activate the G Crusher. At that point in time, Godzilla is then rendered paralyzed, and it's just on the ground, and they just keep firing at it, and ultimately the brain explodes. Some people will debate me on this, but Godzilla becomes paralyzed, and once you become completely paralyzed, in human anatomy, you die. You do not like people who have like polio from like 50, 70 years ago. They're stuck in an iron lung because some people are paralyzed from the from the neck down, and they cannot control like how to breathe or like their heart rate. They can't control that, so they need the iron lung, which helps them breathe or put on life support for the rest of their lives. Godzilla doesn't have the luxury of having the giant iron lung by his side. You literally see him motionless. His mouth isn't moving. His eyes aren't blinking. He's dead. He's gone. He's gone. Baby is released from the container, gives out the final roar. Rodan wakes up, and I don't know exactly why he was flying over Godzilla, or just happened to be circling the area and then gets shot down on the Godzilla. So Mechagodzilla takes out the Rodan. Rodan lands on Godzilla, and here is the moment where, you know, all hope is lost. You're saying, okay, it's over. Both monsters are dead. The humans have finally won. And this is the moment, I think, for a first-time watcher, your heart drops. Your heart drops as soon as you see Godzilla die, and then you're like, oh, there's a little bit of hope for Rodan, and he just dies. It like just gets shot out of the air. You see him land on Godzilla, and a miracle happens. It is quite literally a miracle, because the way they do the spiral beam in Space Godzilla, and did he have the spiral beam in Destroya?
Yeah, he did.
Has that?
He did.
I'm not sure how that was ever brought up. I'm not sure if it's like Broly, where he just continuously gets stronger as like
his meltdown was getting worse, and so
the scene when his dorsals start melting. It's
yeah,
like the very like peak of that movie.
Yeah, it's kind of like this movie did it the best. I think it did the spiral beam the best, with Rodan dying and all of his energy going towards Godzilla. Whereas in Space Godzilla, I think it just sort of happens. It's just kind of out of nowhere. It's like, oh, spiral red beam, no way. And then I'm gonna say it for Destroyer. It just kind of happens. It's just like he's become powerful. He's going critical mass, and then it just kind of happens. We're like, where did this come from? Like, and this is the great introduction for the spiral red beam is, Godzilla taking in all of Rodan's energy, and this becoming his trump card to Super Mechagodzilla is that one ultimate power up for him. And Chris, you can actually relate. We made a special little power up for Godzilla. We did. Yeah, we made one. We had the one up the spiral red beam.
Well, of course we had to.
Yeah, and that's what makes Mechagodzilla the toughest enemy out of the entire Godzilla universe, is because
Wrath of the Hybrid is totally canon.
Yeah,
what Toho written down.
But no, that's what makes I personally think Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla or Mechagodzilla 2 the toughest enemy out of the entire Godzilla universe franchise. Is just because the writers had to come up with something completely new to try to take down this brand new foe that had just killed him. Nothing else has ever worked. So what else do you do from that point? From that writing perspective, what else do you do? You just killed off your best character. There's literally nothing else he could do at that point in time with Super Mechagodzilla. He had one strength, and that one Godzilla had that one opportunity to destroy Mechagodzilla, and it just came and went. And there was no way he was getting back close to Super Mechagodzilla. So the directors literally had to write up another way to bring in, to destroy this new mega foe, the ultimate foe, the super ultra nightmare mode foe, Mechagodzilla 2.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Well, we could have a whole debate on who is the best villain of Godzilla. I mean, other than humanity, like Matt said, but but another monster. We can have a whole debate on that too, because we've been fighting this ever since we met. I know. So maybe that could be another one. That could be another podcast episode. So in terms of like the the characters in Mechagodzilla, the monsters, it has a bigger cast of the monsters compared to Destroya, but. Like Nico, this is where I was saying how you're probably gonna anticipate what I'm saying about Destroy, because me, like my opinions on him, and I do think that he he's kind of like the Final Wars guy again. He's all style but no substance. He looks badass. He looks like he can kill. He looks so, but when it comes down to it, he's the weakest thing out there just on the sole fact that he got killed by the military. I mean, that's just something that I will never get past is in Destroy how, he flies up and just a few missiles and all that, whatever, he just falls back down and explodes, So it's interesting. And you brought up a good point earlier how Destroy seems more of a cameo than an actual player in the film. But I think that's because his final form was the smallest use in the film. But he was in the film for a long time. He started as the crab thing and just kind of fighting all the humans. And then when Junior comes into play, Junior has his fight with the kind of the aggregate stage or whatever, the bigger guy, and then the flying form of him. So I mean, Destroya was in it more. It's just we didn't get to see his final form for that long of time. It was a shorter time we got to see that actually happen. But I mean, in terms of the monsters that were used, I mean, in Destroy, I mean, I think has a fair cast. I mean, it's not like they wanted to have all these monsters, one, because they probably didn't have the budget to have all these monsters playing, because we know what happened with Final Wars. So you have a crap ton of monsters, which is great, but then the battles have to be trimmed down to 1 minute because that's all this budget money they have, but I think Burning Godzilla is and I know nowadays, I think a lot of fans kind of look at Burning Godzilla as kind of an overused, I would say mostly in the toy collecting spectrum of things, is that version of Godzilla has been overused so much in terms of merchandise that it's a little bit ridiculous. But I mean, seriously though, looking at just the films, that is the most colorful one, other than, I don't know, maybe Shin Godzilla with his purple laser show going on, and then maybe Godzilla Earth because of the different color tone. I don't really know, but and then obviously the legendary Godzilla with now this blue glow from Pacific Rim that he acquired somehow. So but I mean, I think Burning Godzilla as a whole, though, I mean, it's just such this amazing looking kind of suit design, all that kind of stuff. I think Godzilla Jr. in this had the best design out of every one of his things, because I've never understood Godzilla, the baby Godzilla idea in the whole Heisei thing. He pops up in this egg and he's that one design, and you're like, all right, fine. He looks more like dinosaur-ish, like really dinosaur looking. And then all of a sudden you go to Space Godzilla and it's like, what the hell happened to you? Huh? How did you go from that to looking like? But I get it, because what was it? Wasn't the excuse for his design was that at the time Barney was popular, and so they needed to cater him towards something that might have been a really off random rumor or something, but
I heavily doubt that. It
okay,
was probably way more of the Minya
design,
probably,
yeah.
Honestly, probably trying to cater towards the female audience that Mothra drew in.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was going with. I think it's more of the Minya look, and I don't think that should ever be referenced ever. You should never use Minya as a design template. So even Minya doesn't want to be his own design template. But yeah, but no, you have Godzilla Jr. and he looks like the son of Godzilla. That is the best that Godzilla Jr. has ever looked, or the son of Godzilla, whatever. And I think his battle with Destroyer was pretty entertaining. It was pretty tense because, you feel for him. He gets beat up. He gets his freaking chest bit open by Destroyer's alien mouth thing. That was pretty good. So I don't know. Mechagodzilla, though, it is my least favorite Mechagodzilla because I just, compared to the Showa Mechagodzilla and Kiryu, I don't know. I just look at those two guys and I'm like, they're just so much more fierce, looking. And I don't know, man. And Kiryu's my favorite, but I think that's just because he's more mobile and I just think his origin is just way more interesting rather than just, oh, he's an alien. Oh, now he's a human-made robot, which is just, I'm not saying he has the same levels of power as Mogera. I'm just saying it's just another big Power Rangers mecha thing that the humans put together. But Kiryu is the bones of the original Godzilla. That's pretty cool. But that's digressing into different, that's yeah. I know that's gonna piss you off. But I don't know. I think both movies have and then Rodan obviously in Mechagodzilla. I think I don't really know if I could pick a side when it comes to the monster roster in that one. I I mean, like I said, Mechagodzilla is my least favorite Mechagodzilla design or version of him. Destroya's cool, but he's a wimp. So it really comes down to Godzilla himself, and like I think in Mechagodzilla, Godzilla is just what he's been. There really hasn't, he doesn't have a design change. He's kind of the same suit looking, minor variations on him. And it's also when they started to, or maybe it was with Mothra, but they started to change his roar to have this more high pitch whine sounding roar. Was it Mothra? Okay, so it was Mothra, but like they didn't fix it in this one. I was like, why? And then like Destroy, I think they kind of toned it back down a little bit, but I'm like, man, why didn't you keep that 91 roar? Like that was just like the most ferocious thing. Oh, I love that roar, but
definitely trying to do something weird with Mothra. Remember they changed his atomic breath sound too.
Yeah, it was like a high. It was like this really high pitch. Yeah, like a dog whistle. Like didn't really have a lot of bass to it. It was just very like, yeah. So really, when it comes to the Godzilla, I mean, I don't even think. I mean, the Godzilla and Mechagodzilla is not that memorable neither until he gets the spiral beam attack, because that's the new thing for that one. But really, up until then, Godzilla's he's just what he is. But Burning Godzilla, it's a whole different. I mean, you could just like the design. I mean, even just his eyes. Like I had a while ago, I had the X Plus just Burning Godzilla figure, and the detail in the eyes is just like he's pissed like all the time in that film. I mean, but the cool thing about it is somehow I don't know how they did it, or it's just me thinking too much into it. But you can see like the pain in his eyes too. Like there's rage and frustration, but there's also pain because he's dying. So it's like, I don't know. It's this you just look on his face and you just feel like, oh man, there's a lot of emotions going on there. Although we can't forget the meme image of the 93 Godzilla. I remember when he's like smiling, or it's kind of that like, you know the image I'm talking about, right? Mm-hmm. I'll probably pop it up in editing. Future me, remember to edit, put that image in there. But yeah, I don't know. And Rodan, he's whatever. I've never been a huge fan of Rodan, to be honest. He's never been a monster that I'm like super excited to see. So I can't really say much on him. And yeah, I already talked about the baby Godzilla stuff and yeah, Destroya. So that's kind of me. I don't know. I'm kind of mixed. I think I'll give it to Destroya just because of Burning Godzilla. That's it. And Godzilla Jr. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I think Destroy has the more interesting roster. I think while I like all the monsters in Mechagodzilla 93, I don't really think there's much of a difference. Rodan to Fire Rodan, it's like a palette swap. It's like really whatever, and it's not that impressive. He gets that uranium heat beam, if that's what it's called in canon. It's just like whatever, you know. Nicely animated. That's all I can really say. But there's really no difference there. In Super Mechagodzilla, he gets a backpack. It's not really that impressive. But, just working off what you said, Chris, with Burning Godzilla, I mean, that right there, that visual, the steam coming off of him, the lights and all that stuff. I mean, that's just a special effect that you will always remember. You know what I mean? And people are sick of that because because of the toys, like you said. But I mean, it's the easiest thing to do for somebody to be like, oh yeah, let's just paint them orange up a little bit, and there you go, Burning Godzilla by Playmates or whatever. And you got the different forms of Destroya, and obviously, in terms of like design, it's probably a little bit better than the execution, because much like the rest of the, like, I feel like maybe from Mechagodzilla to Destroya, most of the monsters are completely immobile. Every single one of them. You know what I mean? Space Godzilla is just sitting there doing this the whole time. Barely even walking or anything. But yeah, I mean, that's really all I got to say about it. I like Junior's design plenty fine. Baby Godzilla in 93 is also fine. Mind his evolution too much. Like, I kind of get where they were going. But Destroya definitely, I feel, for me personally, had the better monster roster, with the transformations, and just it felt a little bit more cohesive. And but that's not to say I don't like the monsters in Mechagodzilla.
Right. All right. Well,
so I've actually never understood. So like, prior, like when Junior's gonna fight Destroya, this is just like a little thing I never understood. So they took when Destroyer's in his flying form at that time, it's like the modern head flying around, and then he lands and then turns back into the crab form. Like, did he just like devolve?
Yeah, it does. It's yeah.
It's weird. It's
Yeah,
weird.
that was.
And then doesn't he
And
actually?
that's not me like trying to prove a point on like mine. That's just me being like, that's
Yeah.
kind of weird.
Do you remember when Junior finally gives the death blow to him too? The crab form. He transforms into the flying form to crash into the building.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they didn't want to throw the crab suit into that thing instead.
Yeah, and then even that doesn't Destroyer like in one of his battles against Godzilla towards the end of the movie, doesn't he like technically lose and then turn into all the little crabs and then becomes the giant form again?
Yeah.
It's weird. Yeah. Or is that just a bunch of little random crabs coming out of nowhere and then Destroyer is just like here?
No, it's him. He turned himself back into the little guys,
okay.
and then So I kind of look at, honestly, I look at Destroyer as prototype of what Legion was. I mean, what Matt was saying earlier, the comparisons between those two monsters, I feel like Dai was looking at Destroyer and they're like, yeah, we could do that better. And he got Legion. It was kind of the same thing, but. All right, I think we're going to come down to the final points here. So, the judgments of where we think we're at. Let's do our end closing thoughts on which one we think was the best closer. We have all our thoughts, all of our points, put it out. Nico, I know what you're going to say, but just say it.
I am going to say Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2 was indeed the better ending. Just going from the earlier beginning points, I think Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 had handily beaten Godzilla vs. Destroyer, but when it came to the last 2 points, I think it was just like a sort of like a too close to call situation where although Destroyer did some things better, it could not create the gap that it would have made up with like the story of Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. Or like the characters, and it all being all, which would have been in total the more fitting ending for the Heisei series. So that's where I stand. It's just those first few categories, Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla that we covered, Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2, I think handily won. And then just although Destroyer has like an edge over Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2, in a few of the categories in the end, it just doesn't. It's just too large of a gap to really cover. It's a slight edge in some parts, but it just doesn't work. It's a giant conceptual movie with a bunch of cool concepts that just didn't execute or didn't focus in the right areas. Besides, Godzilla is dying. Yeah, and then we just had this other kind of side monster to be there just to fight him, and we'll give him a cool backstory, just not really emphasize it as much. Just be like, oh my goodness, he's from the Oxygen Destroyer, but like we're not going to worry about it. We're going to worry about Godzilla and just focus on him. And Destroyer is kind of like there, whereas in Mechagodzilla 2 is a much more focused foe in that movie, and along with side Godzilla, and yeah, that's where I stand point. I'm sticking with Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 as being the better ending.
So I'll give you the earlier points that it's a more cohesive film. I'll definitely give you that. But I'm going to stick with Destroyer because I just feel that the way to end off a franchise, and I mean, I even look at Final Wars, like if that would have been the final like nail in the coffin for the series. I just feel that it's like a celebration. You got to have some kind of, it's either a celebration or a major death of the character. And I know that both films were trying to go with that idea of, okay, we have to do the death of this character then, because it wasn't necessarily a celebration like Final Wars was. I say that's a celebration of all the whole franchise as a whole. They had a happy ending towards the end and all that. But in terms of these two, they were more of the, okay, like we're going to kill this character off and blah, blah, blah. But I just still think that even though Mechagodzilla is one of the most popular Godzilla antagonists, I just think the fact that Godzilla was able to kind of go out on his own, and they ended it kind of bringing it full circle with 1954, because 1954 has always been canon in these films and disregarding the other films, the other Showa stuff. Like that's what I think Destroy is so impactful to me personally, is because it has so much of that connection to 54, and that's how, like, that's what the franchise started as, and that was such a pivotal movie for it, and even events in terms of canon story wise, in universe canon, that the fact that they bring it back and they had this idea to make the Oxygen Destroyer this actual monster, and like that, I just thought that was a really cool way to do it. And yes, Destroyer was not executed perfectly, but I just feel that the movie went out with a bang. I mean, just these bombastic moments, the music mixed with that. And yes, the characters weren't really interesting to follow, but that's really not saying much, because a lot of Godzilla films, the humans aren't really, you don't care to follow them. So Mechagodzilla 2, yes, is a lot more of a cohesive story. But I just feel that if it did end with that, I don't think that would have helped the Heisei series have more of a longevity. And I mean, sure, you could probably take out Space Godzilla, because maybe that film might have just, I mean, I personally love that film, but I feel like, objectively speaking, yeah, that film's kind of like a weird outlier. It's just kind of there to fill the gap between these two films. But if it was just that, and then they ended the Heisei series and that was it, like, let's say we didn't even get the Millennium series or something, I don't know how I would feel about that. But Destroya just feels like, I really feel it caps off with the end credits with that music. I just feel like this was Godzilla. Listen to it while the credits roll. Like, it just, I don't know. And like I said, the connection with the first film and some of the characters, the cameos coming back and all that, and Godzilla Jr. actually looking like Godzilla. I yeah, I'm gonna stick with Destroya. I just feel like history would be weird. I feel like it would just be so weird feeling without that film. So that's what I'm going to stick with.
But wouldn't it be weird if, Godzilla didn't end with Final Wars, or if Godzilla didn't end with Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla or Terror of Mechagodzilla, or let alone if there was even a Godzilla Raids Again?
Well,
Wouldn't it feel weird with this one film out of place?
Well, I feel like Terror
Like,
Mechagodzilla would have been weird to end on, because that was just kind of there. But in terms of Final Wars, no. I think if that was the ending, I feel like that would have been also appropriate. Because like I said, that was a celebration of the whole franchise up to that point. And you have Godzilla and his son. That's it. They're the end. They won. The aliens are dead. The humans get to rebuild. That could have been like, Godzilla realizes, oh, the humans are on my side. I don't need to try and fight them anymore. Like that, I don't feel history would have been weird with that. I know a lot of fans hate that film, but I feel like the series, that would have been but that's the Millennium series. That's a whole different, thing there. But in terms of Heisei, I just feel like Godzilla going out this way, than him being killed by an adversary. I don't know, man. Because then what would happen with Mechagodzilla at the end? Mechagodzilla lives and survives, and the humans win, the military wins, and they doesn't that destroy the whole metaphor of what Godzilla is? This unstoppable, metaphor of the atomic bomb.
I mean, it's purely a speculative thing, because
Yeah.
like, I'm still not entirely sure. I know that the death thing was on the table for 93, but I can't say for certain that was like the ending,
Mhm.
I'm not even quite certain that it was. I think it was like proposed or something. But I mean, a lot of this is just, it's fun to think about.
It
You know what
is.
I mean?
Yeah.
Think about
Yeah.
like, hey, what if it ended here? And there's so many different factors to consider, when
Mhm.
you're talking like that. And we can debate story things all day. Like, the one thing I'm going to say about it is, like, I do think that had it ended with Mechagodzilla, I think that would have been fine. I think, like I said, the artists have been on record saying that they were running out of ideas. They were kind of tired. Um, and I think that pushing on another year with Space Godzilla, I think you really get that sensation. I think by
Mhm.
that point, you kind of, regardless of how people feel about it, I think you can look at that in comparison to everything that came before and be like, "Yep, they're getting tired." It doesn't have the same feel, doesn't have the same energy as what came before it. Um, so yeah, and I really, and like what Nico said at the very beginning, it's just been sticking with me this whole time, is like to end the Heisei series with Mechagodzilla, kind of like, again, that bookend to like how the Showa movie or series ended. Like, I think that's awesome. Like, that would have been so cool, and appropriate. But yeah. Anyways, didn't mean to interrupt you, Chris, but like I
No, no,
said,
you're
at the
good.
end of the day, it's all just speculation and stuff like that.
Right.
Destoroyah did a
Mhm.
good job, and honestly, what probably should have happened was Space Godzilla should have just gone right out the window, and it should have just been like, end it on the 40th anniversary. Boom, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it should have
would
been.
have the
Yeah.
perfect way for it to go out.
You
But
know, we can maybe say this. How cool would it have been if they combined, and this is more speculative stuff, but it would have been cool maybe if they had the plot point of the burning Godzilla dying and with Godzilla Jr. being grown up where he has that design, but instead of Destroya being the villain, it's Mechagodzilla 2 and they do it that way. They mix these stories to kind of make the ultimate ending. Maybe Mechagodzilla's there to actually prevent Godzilla from being a nuke and maybe trying to get him to melt down or something. So maybe instead of the G Crushers, you're trying to like subdue his explosion. I don't know. That'd be kind of cool. I'm throwing that out there, but
That's definitely interesting. It's
Yeah.
definitely interesting.
A
I
mix.
do like that.
yeah.
fan fiction, Chris.
Hey, Nico, there, the next Kenshin production.
There it is. There
We'll
it
do
is.
that.
Yeah.
Fan fiction. You know?
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so yeah, my side though is Destroya. So where are you at, Matt?
I'm gonna stick with MG2. I think it's more fun to think about had it ended there, because I just feel like they really just dragged it out for 2 more movies that were completely unnecessary. But again, that's just speculative. Had all the points that you brought up before, Chris, about the execution, and if indeed they were going to be going with like killing Godzilla at the end, and that was going to be it, then yeah, I think it would be a little weird. Destoroyah ultimately, I think, did a great job at closing out the series. You know what I mean? So you know, I like both movies. I'm still a little bit torn, but I would have liked to have seen what would have happened with had it just ended in 93 or 94, whenever that original one was supposed to come out.
Okay. Well, since you agreed with Nico, we're never going to invite you on here again. So,
Like Destoroyah though, I got the look. I got the poster right
we got
there. See that?
okay, fine. That makes up for it. No, and it's funny for me because that's my birthday year. I mean, that's like the whole, you'd think that, that would be something, but no, Nico, you brought up some good points. I mean, a lot of the things you brought up were kind of made me go, oh, okay, yeah, like that actually is like the whole idea of bookending the series with the Mechagodzilla thing, just like in the show. That would have been interesting. I agree with that. So, but yeah. So, guys, I think that's going to do it for our 3rd episode of our podcast. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you, Matt, for joining us for this fun debate-ish, discussion-ish kind of thing.
Thank you for having me.
You guys comment below what you think. If you think Destroya or Mechagodzilla would have been the better film to end the series on. Comment below letting us know which topics you'd like us to cover next, which kind of guest you would want us to invite. Because we plan on continuing to roll out these podcasts as long as we want to. So that's going to do it from us. I think that's it. All right. See you guys later.
Yeah.
A to the O's.
All right. We're good.